My mother charged me rental fees, then assigned my room to my sister and her children without consultation. She branded me selfish for voicing my complaints. I exited discreetly, retrieved all I had financed, and let the property deteriorate when my financial support vanished. The locks were changed, my bags were on the curb, and my own mother wouldn't even look me in the eye. Okay, not literally, but emotionally, that's exactly what it felt like the day I walked into my childhood home to find my entire life had been uprooted without a single word. My name doesn't really matter for this, but trust me, at 26, I finally understood what it meant to be the family ATM, a human piggy bank for the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Growing up, there was always a clear favorite, a golden child. My older sister, Brittany, 3 years my senior, had this magnetic pull, this way of commanding every eye in the room that I, no matter how hard I tried, could never replicate. Mom would just light up when Brittany walked in, a switch flipped from dim to dazzling. Dad, bless his heart, tried to balance the scales, but he worked long, grueling hours at the factory, rarely home enough to see how heavily they tipped. Brittany got pregnant at 19, a shockwave through our quiet suburban existence. Mom, however, turned it into a spectacle, throwing a baby shower that probably cost more than my entire senior year of high school. Then, 2 years later, another pregnancy, another different guy, and Mom acted like it was just another blessed event, another reason for celebration. Meanwhile, I was clocking in at 2 part-time jobs while slogging through community college, scraping together every penny because there was never, ever any money left for my tuition. It was an unspoken rule. Brittany's needs were immediate and paramount. Mine were an afterthought. This dynamic, where one child is perpetually coddled and the other is expected to be self-sufficient and silently supportive, often creates deep-seated resentment and a distorted sense of responsibility. I was slowly learning that I was the reliable one, which meant I was also the expendable one. The real rent situation, the one that truly cemented my role, started when I was 22. I just landed a decent job, a junior accountant at a firm downtown. The pay wasn't fantastic, but it was steady, it had benefits, and I was still living at home, diligently saving for my own place, chipping in for groceries and utilities when I could. Then came that evening. Mom sat me down at the kitchen table, her face set in a serious expression. "You're making good money now," she said, her voice even, as she slid a piece of paper across the worn laminate. "It's time you started paying rent like an adult." The number scrawled on that paper was $850 a month. My stomach clenched. For context, I could have found a perfectly decent one-bedroom apartment in our area for about $900. When I dared to point this out, her face hardened. "You get meals included, utilities, laundry, everything," she argued, a familiar edge creeping into her tone. "You won't find that kind of deal anywhere else. Plus, your family. This is just teaching you responsibility." I was too exhausted to argue. The job was new, demanding, and, honestly, I just wanted peace. I figured I'd pay for 6 months, build up my savings, and then I'd be out. That was 4 years ago. Here's the thing nobody tells you about paying rent to your parents. The rules are different. I paid that $850 every single month, never late, never short. But Mom still treated me like I was 16. She'd wander into my room without knocking, a casual invasion of privacy that always made my skin prickle. She'd interrogate me about what time I came home, and God forbid I had plans with friends instead of joining them for dinner. "I don't know why you're being so antisocial," she'd sigh, "we're your family." Meanwhile, Brittany had moved out with her current boyfriend, Tyler, and their 2 kids, Mackenzie and Jackson. Tyler worked construction when he felt like it, which wasn't often. They were perpetually behind on rent in their cramped 2-bedroom on the other side of town, constantly hitting Mom up for money. And here's a little secret. By this point, I wasn't just paying for my room. The internet bill? In my name, because Mom's credit was shot. I'd upgraded the service so I could work from home sometimes, and I covered the $120 monthly cost. The streaming services everyone used? My accounts. The new washer and dryer in the basement? I'd split that cost with Dad when the old ones gave up the ghost. The kitchen renovation Mom had been desperate for? I contributed $3,000 toward the $8,000 total. Yet, I was still just a tenant who needed to learn responsibility. But that was only the beginning of the nightmare. Everything changed on a Tuesday in March. I got home from work around 6:30, utterly drained from a particularly brutal audit. The house was full of noise and unusual cacophony. Mom and Dad were typically quiet in the evenings, watching TV or reading. I walked into chaos. Mackenzie and Jackson were tearing through the living room, screaming at a volume that should have required a permit. Brittany was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone, utterly oblivious. Tyler, predictably, was nowhere to be seen. Mom was in the kitchen, cooking enough food to feed a small army. My shoulders tensed. "What's going on?" I asked, dropping my work bag with a thud. Mom turned, a too bright smile plastered on her face. "Surprise! Brittany and the kids are moving in for a while. Isn't that wonderful?" My stomach plummeted, a cold dread washing over me. "What do you mean for a while?" "They're having some financial trouble," Mom explained, lowering her voice conspiratorially as if that somehow made the news more palatable. "Tyler lost his job and they got evicted. Family helps family, sweetheart. You understand." I understood perfectly. I understood that once again, Brittany's problems were about to become everyone's problems. "Where are they staying?" I asked, already knowing the answer, already feeling the icy tendrils of certainty tightening around my chest. "Well, the guest room isn't set up for kids," Mom said, deliberately avoiding my gaze. "So, we moved Brittany and the kids into your room. It's the biggest bedroom, and they need the space. You can take the guest room." The words hit me like a physical blow, a cold, hard slap to the face. My vision blurred for a second, a rush of blood to my ears. "You moved them into my room without asking me?" I heard my voice, sharp and high-pitched, almost unrecognizable. "Don't be dramatic," Mom said, waving her hand dismissively, as if my very existence was an inconvenience. "We didn't throw away any of your stuff. We just moved it to the guest room. You're at work all day anyway. What does it matter which room you sleep in?" A tremor ran through me. "I pay rent, Mom. I pay $850 a month for that room." Her expression hardened, a steely glint in her eyes. "And now you'll pay $850 for the guest room. What's the difference? You still have a roof over your head." The difference, the huge difference, was that she had given away something I was paying for without even having the common courtesy to tell me. Brittany appeared in the kitchen doorway then, Jackson perched on her hip, her face a mask of faux concern. "Can you not yell? You're scaring the kids." I stared at her, a bitter taste in my mouth. "You knew about this?" Mom offered, Brittany said defensively, shrugging a shoulder. "What was I supposed to do? We were about to be homeless. Unlike you, I have children to think about." "Unlike me," I shot back, my voice barely controlled. "You made choices that led to this situation. And I'm not subsidizing those choices by giving up what I pay for." "You're being incredibly selfish right now," Mom said sharply, her eyes narrow. "Your sister needs help. Your niece and nephew need stability. All we're asking is that you be flexible for a few months until they get back on their feet." A few months. That phrase does a lot of heavy lifting in conversations like these. A few months can easily become a year. A year can become indefinite. It's a classic example of how enabling behaviors, often rooted in a desire to help a struggling family member, can inadvertently create a cycle of dependency and prevent that person from ever developing self-sufficiency. I retreated to the guest room, my chest tight, to assess the damage. They'd shoved my furniture in wherever it fit, which wasn't well. My desk was wedged against the window, blocking most of the natural light. My dresser was crooked because the room wasn't quite wide enough. My clothes were piled haphazardly on the bed, my books stacked in precarious towers in the corner. The room was half the size of my actual bedroom, with no closet, just a small, dusty wardrobe that couldn't hold a quarter of my clothes. The air felt thin, suffocating. I went across the hall and opened my bedroom door. Brittany had already made herself sickeningly at home. Her clothes were in my closet. The kids' toys were scattered across my floor. They'd even moved in a second twin bed for Jackson, meaning Mackenzie would apparently share the queen with Brittany. My familiar bedding was gone, replaced with Brittany's loud, floral comforter set. The sheer disrespect was staggering, a punch to the gut that left me breathless. That night, I barely slept. The guest room bed was really just a cheap futon, a metal bar digging relentlessly into my back. Through the thin walls, I could hear everything. Mackenzie whimpering about missing her old room, Jackson singing loudly at 9 p.m., Brittany on the phone with Tyler, who was apparently staying with a friend because there wasn't enough room for him at Mom and Dad's house. By morning, a steely resolve had settled over me. My decision was made. I started looking for apartments during my lunch breaks, a covert operation. I was careful not to tell anyone what I was doing. I'd learned over the years that information was currency in my family, and anything I shared would immediately get back to Mom, twisted and weaponized. Finding a place took 3 weeks. I settled on a 1-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood, about 20 minutes from work. The rent was $950, just $100 more than I was currently paying, and the best part? I'd actually have privacy and space. I signed the lease, my hand trembling slightly, and set my move-in date for the first Saturday in April. During those 3 weeks, living at home became unbearable, a living hell. Mackenzie and Jackson had no concept of quiet hours. They'd be up at 6 a.m. on weekends, running through the house, screaming at the top of their lungs. Brittany made no effort to control them. "Kids are just loud," she'd say with an infuriating shrug. "You'll understand when you have your own." The bathroom situation was a nightmare. We only had 2 full bathrooms, and now there were 6 people vying for shower time and counter space. My toiletries kept getting used and not replaced. One morning, I found Mackenzie had gotten into my makeup and completely destroyed a $40 foundation palette. "She's just playing," Brittany scoffed when I complained. "It's not that serious. Just buy more." My jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth would crack. The kitchen wasn't any better. I'd come home from work to find the leftovers I'd carefully saved for dinner simply gone. Brittany would give me this innocent, wide-eyed look and say, "The kids were hungry." "I didn't think you'd mind sharing." Sharing, I thought bitterly, would have involved asking first. I bought a mini fridge for the guest room and started keeping all my food in there. Mom saw it and, I swear, had the nerve to call me selfish. "We're a family," she said, her voice laced with disappointment. "We share things." "What's yours is everyone's," I pointed out, my voice tight, "except what's mine is the only thing being shared. Nobody's using Brittany's stuff without permission." "That's because Brittany doesn't have much," Mom replied, dismissing me with a flick of her wrist. "You have more, so you should give more. That's how family works." That conversation crystallized something for me. In Mom's mind, I existed solely to subsidize Brittany's life. My success wasn't something to be proud of, it was merely a resource to be exploited. What I found next changed everything. The final straw came 2 days before my scheduled move. I got home from work to find that someone had gone through my room. Again. My desk drawers were open, and my work laptop, a piece of company property that I always kept in a locked cabinet, was sitting out. A cold spike of fear shot through me. I found Brittany in the kitchen, casually scrolling through her phone. "Did you go through my desk?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "Yeah, I needed to print something for Mackenzie's school," she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Your printer still works, right? You went into my work laptop?" The audacity stunned me. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Relax. I didn't look at your files or anything. I just printed 1 page." I wanted to scream. Instead, I went in my room and started packing what I could fit into my car without anyone noticing. My important documents, my jewelry, my expensive clothes, my laptop. Everything else would have to wait until moving day. That night at dinner, Mom announced that she needed everyone to chip in more for groceries since there were extra people in the house now. She looked directly at me, her eyes drilling into mine. "You're making good money," Mom said, her voice implying an expectation. "An extra $200 a month shouldn't be a problem." I slowly put down my fork, the metal clinking softly against the plate. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I'm paying $850 for a room half the size of the one I was originally renting. I have no privacy. My stuff keeps getting used without permission." And now you want me to pay more for groceries that I barely have time to eat because I'm never here. Don't make it sound so transactional, Dad said quietly, his voice surprisingly firm. He'd been largely silent through most of these conflicts, and his sudden participation surprised me. Your sister needs help. My sister needs to figure out her own life, I retorted, the dam beginning to crack. I'm not responsible for her choices. Family takes care of each other, Mom said firmly, a familiar mantra. You keep saying that, I shot back, the words tumbling out now, but it only seems to apply to me taking care of everyone else. When have any of you taken care of me? The table went silent. Brittany stared at her plate, a sullen pout on her lips. Mom's face had turned a dangerous shade of red. Dad looked profoundly uncomfortable. We gave you a home, Mom said, finally, her voice cold as ice. We raised you, fed you, clothed you. Everything we did was taking care of you. That's called being a parent, I replied, my voice shaking slightly. That's not something I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life repaying. I excused myself from the table, the abrupt scrape of my chair on the floor echoing in the silence, and went to my cramped guest room. I could hear them talking about me in low voices, but I didn't care anymore. I was done. Moving day arrived, a day I'd been planning with surgical precision. I'd taken the day off work, telling them I had a dentist appointment. I'd rented a U-Haul, and my coworker James, a kind, sturdy man, had agreed to help me load it. I'd given him the bare bones of my situation, and he'd been horrified. Your own mother gave away your room, he'd exclaimed. That's insane. We started loading at 8 a.m. I'd timed it perfectly. Mom had taken Mackenzie to a doctor's appointment, Brittany had gone with them, and Dad was at work. I had the house to myself. I took everything. My furniture, my kitchen supplies, my towels, my dishes. The TV in the living room? I bought it 2 years ago when the old one died. It went into the truck. The coffee maker everyone used? Mine. The good knife set? Mine. The decent cookware that had replaced Mom's ancient, scratched-up pans? All mine. I unplugged the router and modem I'd been paying for. I took the streaming devices connected to every TV. I even took the batteries out of the remote controls, which was petty, yes, but deeply, profoundly satisfying. The washer and dryer were trickier. I'd paid for half, but moving them would have been too obvious, too time-consuming. Instead, I called the appliance store and asked about their lease-to-own program. Turns out, if someone stops making payments on that kind of arrangement, the store can repossess the items. I made one final payment, then canceled the automatic payments from my account. Mom had never set up her share. She'd been relying on me to handle it. The store would be in touch with her soon enough. I left the guest room furniture because it wasn't mine, but every single item I'd ever purchased, every bit of my investment in that house, left with me. When James and I finished loading the truck, the house looked noticeably different. Not empty, but definitely less comfortable, less full. I left an envelope on the kitchen counter with a crisp, concise note inside, I've moved out. Here's written notice that I will not be paying rent for April. All items I purchased have been removed. The router and modem will be disconnected at the end of the billing cycle since the account is in my name. Best of luck. I didn't leave a forwarding address. James helped me unload at my new apartment, and by evening, I was exhausted, muscles aching, but utterly surrounded by my own things in my own space. I ordered pizza, cracked open a cold beer, and savored the absolute, profound silence. No kid screaming, no sister guilt-tripping, no mother making snide comments about my life choices. Then, around 7 p.m., my phone started to ring. Mom, Brittany, Dad, even Tyler. I watched the names flash across the screen, a strange sense of detachment washing over me, and let every single call go to voicemail. The text started coming through. Mom, where are you? What happened to the house? From Brittany. Did you seriously take everything? How are we supposed to function? From Mom. We need to talk. Call me. From Dad. Mom again. This is unbelievable. After everything we've done for you. I didn't respond to any of them. I took a long, hot shower in my own bathroom, no one banging on the door. I made tea in my own kitchen. I sat on my own couch and watched my own TV. The voicemails grew progressively more desperate, then angry. Mom's first message was confused, almost bewildered. "Honey, where are you? There's a note saying you moved out, but that can't be right. Call me back." By the third voicemail, her tone had shifted, ice creeping into her voice. "I don't know what kind of tantrum this is, but you need to bring back our things." That TV was for the family. The coffee maker, the dishes, all of it. "You can't just steal from us." Brittany's voicemails were more direct, laced with venom. "You're such a selfish bitch. We have kids here." "Kids? And you took everything. What kind of aunt is that?" "I saved all of them, just in case." Sunday afternoon, after a weekend of blessed peace, I finally sent a group text to my parents and Brittany. "I paid for everything I took. I have receipts. The TV, the kitchen items, the router, all purchased by me over the past 4 years. If you believe I took something that belongs to you, feel free to provide proof of purchase and I'll return it. Otherwise, stop contacting me." Mom called immediately. I answered this time. "How dare you abandon your family like this," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of fury and shock, before I could even say hello. "Do you have any idea the position you've put us in? The position I've put you in?" I laughed then, and it wasn't a nice sound. It was raw, tinged with a bitterness that had been simmering for years. "You gave away the room I was paying for. You treated me like a walking ATM. You made it clear that my only value was what I could provide financially. That's not true. We love you." Her voice was shrill now. "Love," I said, my voice low and steady, "isn't making your child pay rent and then giving away what they're paying for. Love isn't using their things without permission and expecting them to be grateful for the opportunity to be exploited." "Exploited? We gave you a home. I paid for that home. I paid $850 a month for 4 years. That's over $40,000, Mom. Plus the internet, the streaming services, the appliances, the kitchen renovation. I could have been living in my own place this entire time, building equity, creating my own life. Instead, I was subsidizing yours while being treated like a burden." She went quiet for a moment, the silence thick and heavy. "Your sister needs help. She has children. And that's not my responsibility," I said, cutting her off. "I didn't make the choices that led to her situation. I'm not required to sacrifice my own financial stability and mental health because she keeps making bad decisions." This moment, this firm boundary, was a turning point. It's a prime example of rejecting the sunk cost fallacy, where individuals continue to invest in something, in this case, a dysfunctional family dynamic, because of what they've already put into it, rather than evaluating the current and future costs. I was finally choosing to walk away, despite the immense emotional investment. "So, you're just going to let us struggle?" "You won't struggle," I said. "You'll adjust. You'll figure it out like everyone else does. Brittany can get a job. Tyler can get a job. You and Dad can set boundaries about how long they can stay. But none of that is my problem anymore. If you don't come back and help us, you're not welcome in this family," Mom said, her voice having gone completely cold, a stark, final declaration. That hurt more than I expected, a sharp pang in my chest, but it also clarified everything. Then I guess I'm not part of this family anymore. I hung up. The next few days were quiet, almost eerily so. I focused on making my apartment feel like home, unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, carefully curating my own space. Work was a welcome distraction. I threw myself into a new project, staying late at the office, grateful to have something concrete, something mine, to focus on. Wednesday evening, Dad showed up at my apartment. I still don't know how he found my address. I certainly hadn't given it to him. He knocked, a bag from my favorite Thai restaurant clutched in his hand, a tangible peace offering. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low, almost pleading. I let him in, though I wasn't sure why. We sat at my small dining table, and for a while, we just ate in silence, the clinking of forks against plates the only sound. "Your mother is beside herself," Dad finally said, his voice raspy. "Good," I replied, the word coming out sharper than I intended. He looked surprised by my bluntness. "She didn't mean for things to get this far out of hand. Didn't she?" I asked, my gaze steady on his. Because from where I'm sitting, she made a series of very deliberate choices that all prioritized Brittany over me. Dad sighed heavily. He looked older than I remembered, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion, a weariness etched deep into his features. Your sister has always needed more help. She's not as capable as you are. And whose fault is that? I challenged, my voice rising slightly. You and Mom spent my entire childhood making excuses for her, cleaning up her messes, protecting her from consequences. You created a person who believes the world owes her something. Meanwhile, I learned that nothing I did would ever be enough because I wasn't the one who needed saving. That's not fair, is it? Name one time either of you celebrated my accomplishments without somehow turning it back to Brittany's needs. He couldn't. I could see him trying to think of an example, mentally scrolling through years of family history and coming up empty. You graduated college, he offered weakly. Mom spent my entire graduation dinner talking about how Brittany was struggling financially and asking if I'd seen any entry-level positions at my company that might suit her. She didn't even ask about my job or what I'd be doing. Dad's shoulders slumped. I didn't realize it had gotten this bad. It's been this bad for years, I said. You just didn't notice because it wasn't affecting you directly. What do you want from us? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Nothing, I said, a deep breath settling my core. Honestly, I don't want anything from you anymore. I want to live my life without being guilt into managing everyone else's problems. I want to save my money for my own future instead of pouring it into a household that doesn't appreciate or respect me. I want to come home to peace and quiet instead of chaos and criticism. You're really not coming back, he asked, his eyes filled with a heartbreaking mixture of hope and resignation. There's nothing to come back to, Dad. The life you're offering isn't one I want anymore. He left shortly after, taking his half-eaten pad thai with him. I felt a pang of sadness watching him go, a quiet ache, but I didn't feel guilty. That was new. Over the following weeks, the calls and texts continued sporadically. Brittany sent me a long, rambling message about how I'd abandoned Mackenzie and Jackson, how they asked about me and didn't understand where I'd gone. I didn't respond. Using children as emotional leverage was a line I wouldn't let her cross. Mom tried a different approach, sending me articles about family estrangement and how damaging it was. Each one came with a little message. I thought you should see this, or this reminded me of us. I deleted them without reading past the headlines. Through the grapevine of extended family, I started hearing about the fallout from my departure. Aunt Linda called to check on me, her voice careful. During that conversation, I learned that Mom had been complaining to anyone who would listen about my betrayal. She's telling everyone you stole from them, Linda said gently, that you took the TV and the appliances out of spite. I have receipts for everything, I replied, my voice steady. If she wants to keep lying, I'll be happy to provide documentation. She's also saying Brittany and the kids might have to move into a shelter because they can't afford to stay at the house. That got my attention. Why would they move to a shelter? Apparently, your parents can't afford to keep them there without your rent money. Your dad mentioned something about the mortgage being tight. A cold realization washed over me. I'd known my parents weren't great with money, but I hadn't realized how much they'd been relying on my contributions. The rent, the internet, my share of groceries, the various utilities I'd been quietly covering. I did some quick mental math and felt sick. I'd been paying for roughly a third of their household expenses without even realizing it. That's not my problem, I told Linda, and I meant it, even though it felt harsh, even though a part of me, a small, wounded part, recoiled at the coldness of my own words. They made the choice to take in Brittany and her kids without considering whether they could afford it. They gave away my room and expected me to just accept it. The financial consequences are theirs to deal with. I know, Linda said gently. I'm on your side here. I just thought you should know what's being said. I appreciate it, I said, and if anyone asks, you can tell them I'm doing great. Because I was. My apartment was peaceful. My bank account was growing instead of draining. I joined a gym near my office and started going 3 times a week. I was sleeping better than I had in years. The constant, low-level background stress of managing everyone else's emotions had finally lifted, and I felt lighter, freer. 2 months after I moved out, I got a call from an unknown number. Usually, I wouldn't answer, but something made me pick up. Is this the daughter of Teresa Montgomery? a woman's voice asked. My blood ran cold. Yes. Who's calling? This is Rebecca from Springfield Community Hospital. Your father was admitted this evening with chest pains. He's stable now, but he asked us to contact you. I grabbed my keys, my heart pounding, and was at the door before the call even ended. Dad was sitting up in a hospital bed when I arrived, looking pale but alert. Mom was in the chair next to him, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. She looked up when I walked in, and something complicated, unreadable, crossed her face. You came, she said, her voice thin. Of course I came, I replied, my voice steady. He's my father. The doctor explained that it had been a warning sign rather than a full heart attack. Likely stress-related. Dad would need to make some lifestyle changes, reduce stress, possibly start medication. He'd be fine with proper care. I stayed for an hour, mostly sitting in silence, while Mom fussed over Dad and nurses came in and out to check vitals. Finally, Mom stepped out to call Brittany with an update. I'm sorry, Dad said as soon as we were alone, his voice weak. For what? For everything. For not seeing how we were treating you. For not standing up for you more. For taking your help for granted. He looked at me then, his eyes filled with genuine remorse. Your mother and I have been arguing a lot since you left. About money, about Brittany, about how we raised you girls. The hospital social worker asked about our stress levels, and it all came out. What came out? That we leaned on you too hard. That we expected you to hold everything together while making no equivalent demands on your sister. That we took advantage of your competence and your generosity. He took a shaky breath. The social worker asked if we'd considered family therapy. Are you considering it? I don't know if your mother will agree, but I am, even if it's just for me. He reached for my hand, his grip weak but sincere. I can't undo the past 4 years, or the 26 years before that, but I want you to know that I see it now. I see what we did. It wasn't enough to fix everything, not by a long shot, but it was something. Mom came back into the room then, and the moment broke. She and I made awkward small talk about Dad's care instructions and when he'd be discharged. I left before things could get more uncomfortable, promising to check in the next day. Driving home, I felt the weight of the evening settling on me. Seeing Dad in that hospital bed had scared me more than I wanted to admit. But it hadn't changed the fundamental truth of my situation. I couldn't go back to being the family's financial safety net. That role had nearly broken me. Dad came home 2 days later with strict orders to rest. I visited once, bringing groceries and staying just long enough to make sure he was settled. Brittany was there with the kids, and the house looked worse than I remembered, cluttered, chaotic, with that specific kind of mess that comes from too many people in too small a space. Brittany barely acknowledged me beyond a curt nod. Mom was polite but distant, her eyes still holding that icy resentment. The message was clear. I wasn't forgiven for leaving. I was okay with that. Another month passed. I got a promotion at work, a raise that came with more responsibilities, but also more financial breathing room. I started looking at houses, thinking about building equity like I should have been doing for years. My apartment was nice, but I wanted something permanent, something truly mine. Late one night, I got a text from Brittany. Just one line. Tyler and I are getting back together. We're moving out next week. I didn't respond, but I felt a strange sense of closure. The crisis that had been the excuse for all of this was ending. My family would have to figure out their finances without me, and maybe that was for the best. A week later, Dad called. Can we meet for coffee? We met at a diner halfway between my apartment and their house. Dad looked better, healthier than he had in the hospital. He'd lost a little weight, and some of the stress lines around his eyes had softened. Brittany's gone, he said without preamble. Moved in with Tyler again. Different apartment, same situation probably. Your mother and I had a long talk after they left, about our finances, about retirement, about a lot of things we should have discussed years ago. He stirred sugar into his coffee, not meeting my eyes. We can't afford the house anymore. Without your rent money, and with the extra expenses from having Brittany and the kids here, we depleted our savings. We're behind on the mortgage. I felt a pang of something then. Guilt mixed with vindication. What are you going to do? Sell, probably. Downsize to something more manageable. Your mother's upset about it, but it's the reality we're facing. He finally looked up at me, his gaze direct. She blames you, at least partially. I want you to know that I don't. This was our responsibility to manage, and we failed. I'm not going to offer to help, I said clearly, making sure there were no ambiguities. Just so we're on the same page. I know. I'm not asking you to. He smiled sadly, a flicker of genuine sadness in his eyes. I'm just telling you because I want you to hear it from me, not from your mother or through the family rumor mill. And because I want you to know that I'm working on it, being better, seeing things more clearly. I started individual therapy last week. That's good, Dad. Really good. We talked for another hour about neutral things, my promotion, his health, the unseasonably warm weather. It wasn't healing, not yet, but it was civil. It was more than I'd expected a few months ago. I drove home thinking about consequences. How my parents had made financial decisions based on the assumption that I'd always be there to pick up the slack. How Brittany had made life choices assuming someone would always bail her out. How I'd enabled it all by never setting firm boundaries until I'd finally hit my breaking point. The house sold 3 months later. Mom and Dad moved into a 2-bedroom condo across town. It was smaller, more affordable, and forced them to be more intentional about their spending. Mom didn't speak to me throughout the entire moving process. Dad kept me updated via text, short messages letting me know they were okay. I bought my house that same month. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, a mortgage I could comfortably afford on my salary alone. I furnished it slowly, carefully, choosing pieces I loved rather than whatever was cheapest. Every room reflected my taste, my choices, my life. Brittany reached out 6 months after that, a long, rambling message about how she and Tyler were engaged, how they were really trying this time, how she wanted to rebuild our relationship. I read it twice, then archived it without responding. Maybe that made me cold, but I was protecting the peace I'd worked so hard to build. Christmas came, and for the first time in my life, I didn't spend it with my family. I'd been invited to a coworker's holiday party, and I went. I drank good wine, laughed at terrible jokes, and felt grateful for the chosen family I was building. Mom sent a card, just a generic holiday greeting with her and Dad's name signed at the bottom. No personal message, no invitation to visit. I put it in a drawer and didn't send one back. Looking back now, a year and a half after I moved out, I don't regret my decision. Sometimes people ask if I miss my family, and the honest answer is complicated. I miss the idea of them, the fantasy of what a supportive family might look like. But I don't miss the reality of what my family actually was, a system designed to extract resources from me while giving nothing meaningful in return. I think about the $40,800 I paid in rent alone, not counting everything else I contributed. I think about what I could have done with that money, traveled, invested, bought a house sooner. I think about the emotional energy I spent trying to make everyone else happy while completely neglecting my own needs. The house I bought myself feels like a reclaiming. Every mortgage payment is going towards something that's mine, building a future I chose. Nobody can give away my bedroom or use my things without permission. Nobody can call me selfish for having boundaries. Dad and I text occasionally, surface-level check-ins. He sends photos of the condo, sometimes updates about his health. Mom and I haven't spoken since before the house sold. Brittany's engagement fell apart, apparently, and she moved back in with Mom and Dad for a few weeks before finding another boyfriend with an apartment. The cycle continues, just without me in it. Some of my extended family think I'm cold, that I abandoned my parents when they needed me. Aunt Linda defends me when she can, but mostly she tells me to let it go, that family gossip isn't worth my energy. She's right. I've started dating someone, a guy I met through a hiking group. He comes from a big, messy, loving family where people actually show up for each other, not just financially, but emotionally. Watching his family interact has been eye-opening, seeing what healthy relationships actually look like. He asked me once why I don't talk to my family, and I gave him the abbreviated version. He was quiet for a long time afterward. You know that's not normal, right? He finally said, his voice soft but firm. Charging your kid rent and then giving away their room, using their money and treating them like an ATM, that's not what family does. I know that now, I admit it, a lump forming in my throat. Good, he said, pulling me close, because you deserve better than that. I'm learning to believe him. My life now is smaller in some ways, quieter, but it's mine in a way it never was before. I make decisions based on what I want, not what everyone else needs from me. I spend my money on things that matter to me. I sleep in my own bed in my own house with doors that lock and boundaries that hold. Is it lonely sometimes? Sure, there are moments when I wish I had a family I could call for advice or support, but then I remember what that support actually looked like: conditional, transactional, available only when I was being useful. I'll take lonely over exploited any day. The last communication I had with Mom was 3 months ago. A text message late at night. I hope you're happy living alone with no family. You'll regret this someday. I deleted it. I'm not living without family. I'm living without people who treated me like a bank account with a pulse. There's a difference, and I'm finally starting to understand it. My house is quiet tonight. Tomorrow, I'm having friends over for dinner, people who chose to be in my life and who I chose back. Next month, I'm taking a vacation to somewhere I've always wanted to visit, paid for with money I saved instead of giving away. The life I'm building isn't perfect, but it's honest. Nobody's using me or taking advantage of my generosity. Nobody's calling me selfish for having needs and boundaries. Nobody's giving away what I've worked for without my consent. I'm 28 now, finally living the life I should have been building at 22. Better late than never, I suppose. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed. If I'd kept paying rent and accepting the scraps of respect my family offered. I'd probably still be in that guest room, funding everyone else's choices, wondering why I felt so empty despite doing everything right. Instead, I'm here in my house, with my things, living my life on my terms. And if that makes me selfish in my family's eyes, then I'll wear that label proudly, because the alternative, sacrificing myself on the altar of everyone else's dysfunction, nearly destroyed me. I'm done apologizing for choosing myself. I'm done explaining why I deserve basic respect and consideration. I'm done performing gratitude for the privilege of being exploited. The house collapsed when my money left, just like I knew it would. But I'm not responsible for rebuilding what was never stable in the first place. That's their work to do, not mine. I'm building something better, something that's actually mine. And for the first time in my adult life, I'm okay with that being enough. When do you draw the line between family obligation and self-preservation? Is there ever a point where you're justified in walking away from your blood relatives for your own peace?